Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another live stream. So my name's Lar, and this is Complete Test Success. Today we're focusing on just a general Q&A, a general questions and answers on IELTS. So whether it be questions you have about academic IELTS or general IELTS, general training IELTS, if it's questions about writing task 1, writing task 2, reading, listening, speaking, whatever it might be that you have questions about, feel free just to ask those questions and I'll be able to give you the answers. Or let's say you might be having a problem, like you're not able to improve, or there's something that you're finding difficult to improve. So if you're having some problems in any area of the IELTS test, just let me know what your problems are as well. And again, I'll be happy just to provide you with some solutions to those problems. So yeah, just go into the chat and ask whatever questions you have or describe whatever problems you're having, and I'll be able to give you some support. For those of you who don't know me, as I mentioned, my name is Lar, and I've been an IELTS examiner for writing and for speaking, and I've been teaching IELTS since 2010, so I have a lot of experience. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of students get their scores, and yeah, so that's kind of my background. And like I said, today I'm just going to be answering your questions and trying to give you whatever support you need with improving your scores. So let me think. As of recently, I've been doing some teacher training, so like training teachers with improving their IELTS scores and supporting them with teaching IELTS in their own classrooms. One thing that I've noticed quite a lot is they are quite slow to make the necessary changes that they need to make. So, and this happens with students as well. I think the longer you've been studying IELTS, the more kind of ideas you get about what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do. And when that gets kind of cemented into your head, it's hard to break that and to kind of let go of something that you've believed for a long time. So, quite often if I get a student who's never done the IELTS test before and they're coming into it completely fresh and they have no idea what to do, so their ears are open and they're just ready to take in the information, it's funny how those students will often improve a lot faster because they have no kind of preconceptions of what they're supposed to do or what's the right thing or what's the wrong thing to do. Whereas these teachers that I'm working with, they have so many ideas about what's right and what's wrong, and they're hesitant to make the necessary changes to improve their scores. And I think that's also true then for students. If you've been preparing for the IELTS test for a very long time, you've got information from a lot of different resources, different teachers, different websites, different whatever online resources, and it's hard to understand what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing to do. And then there will be times where you've got two teachers, they're both reliable and they're both telling you to do different things. So you kind of get that conflict of information. Now, if you have two teachers telling you to do two different things, that doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. There can be different ways of achieving your targets. But like I said, there are times where it will be conflicting. You will have conflicting information, and that can be confusing, and it's hard to know what's the right thing to do. So if you have any questions like that, maybe you have different people telling you different things, by all means feel free to ask those types of questions as well, where one person said this and another person said that and I don't know which is the right thing to do. Feel free to ask any questions you have like that as well, and I'll be more than happy to answer those questions for you as well. Okay, so I have fewer people joining me today than normal. I had to change the time of my live stream. So normally it's 1 hour later in the day, but problem I've had here today, well, at least the clock's changed. The clock's changed in my country on Sunday. So my schedule is all kind of mixed up a bit at the moment. I will most likely not be doing the live streams this early every week, but I just need to sort out the rest of my schedule first, and then I'll figure out a more a more consistent time for the live streams. Hi there, Umieri. So feels like you pressed enter before you were finished. So hello to you. Welcome to the lesson. If you have any questions, you said it feels. It looks like you didn't get to finish your question or your describing your problem. So yeah, go ahead, type it out in full there. Share it with me, and I'll be able to answer that for you. Okay, so it feels like I'm stuck at 7.5 and 8 band score in speaking. How can I take it to the next level? So it just depends on your individual problems. It's not going to be the same for every student. And I think that this is one of the bigger problems with improving your scores, is it's hard to know what you're doing wrong. So, if you have a fluency problem, you need to improve your fluency. You need to interact in English more often. You need to, use English more often. The best thing really is speaking. But anything you're doing, even if you're watching movies, listening to music, listening to podcasts, reading books in English, whatever it is, the more you do in English, that all contributes towards your fluency. But really, speaking is the one that will improve your fluency the most. But the thing is, it's not necessarily that you have a fluency problem. Maybe your fluency is good enough, and the problem is actually your vocabulary. When it comes to vocab, you just need to learn more and more and more. It's a never-ending process. And the problem is, like, as you climb up through the band scores, the steps get bigger. For someone to go from a band 4 to a band 5, that's not as big a step as going from a band 5 to a band 6, and it gets bigger and bigger. And up where you are at band 7.5, band 8, and climbing up to 8.5 and 9. And when it comes to vocab, it's not a slow or a short process. It can take months and months. It can take even years to improve your vocabulary to the next level. And it's just, you just have to continue studying vocab. There's nothing else to really do beyond, finding words that you don't know and learning them, and, reviewing those words enough that you can actually use them fluently when the time comes that you need them, that they're there ready to use. And there's a big difference between knowing a word and understanding a word. So like when you hear it in listening, or you read it in reading, and you know what it means, that's not the same thing as being able to use it and having it ready to go when you need that word. So the time it takes from initially seeing a word from the first time and learning what it means, from then until when you're actually able to use it fluently in your own speaking, and to use it in your writing, that takes time. And you need to see that word many times before you're able to actually use it fluently. So it takes time, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. And it's a slow process. And a part of the problem as well is, like, when you're learning vocab at a low level, you can feel the improvements. But when you're studying vocab and you're already at a high level, it's very, very difficult to notice the improvement. So it feels the progress feels much slower than when you're at a lower level. So again, look, I'm basically just saying you need to find out what your problems are and you need to fix them. So again, like, you might have a problem with grammar. If that's the case, you need to find out which grammar mistake you have issues with and fix that. Or if you're not using a wide enough range of structures, you need to make sure you can use a wider range, learn some different structures, and make sure you can use them fluently. And again, with pronunciation, like, if you have a problem, what is that problem and how can you improve it? At such a high level, like if you're already getting 7.5 and 8 in speaking, it's very unlikely that you're mispronouncing individual sounds or words. It's more likely that, you have problems with sentence stress, where maybe you're stressing too many words in each sentence, or, your intonation isn't quite right. A lot of people, their intonation will go up more than it should. or it could be chunking to an extent, but higher level features of connected speech like that would be more likely than you're mispronouncing words or sounds. At the level you're at, it's more likely one of those problems. So I know I'm not really telling you exactly what your problem is, but the truth is you need to figure out what your problems are. With the students on my course, I do practice IELTS speaking tests with them for that purpose. The purpose is they come and do a practice test. I go, these are your biggest problems. This is how you fix them. And then they go and they take the necessary action. But looking at your message here, it's impossible for me to know exactly what your weaknesses are. So step one would be finding out what your weaknesses are, and then you take action on fixing those. I do, like I said, practice speaking tests with the students on my courses, but I also have live streams that focus on the IELTS speaking test once every 5 or 6 weeks. So by all means, you're welcome to join the IELTS speaking live stream that I do. Join in, and I'll be able to listen to you and give you feedback. Or alternatively, like I said, I do offer a practice speaking test service from my academy. So you're welcome to avail of that as well. So I think that kind of covers most of what I can say without actually giving you a practice test and seeing what your specific problems are. But yeah, it's the same with everything though, not just with speaking. Like it's the same with writing, reading, listening. You need to find out what you're doing wrong. You can't fix a problem if you don't know what the problem is. And it's the same with everything. It's the same with your health. If you're not feeling well, step one is find out what's wrong, and then you work on fixing that. Or if you've got a problem with your car, step one is find out what's wrong with it, and then you fix it. So if you don't know what's wrong with something, you can't fix it. It's just pretty much that. So whether it's reading, writing, listening, or speaking, finding out your problems first, and then taking the necessary action on fixing them, and trying to be as specific as possible. Like when I'm working one-on-one with students to improve reading, for example, what I tell them is do a practice test, analyze your incorrect answers, and then take the necessary action to fix those problems. So you need to find out what your problems are first. And probably the most common issue for the first round, at least, is students will come back and say something like, okay, I got question 3 wrong. The reason I got it wrong is because it was too difficult. But that's not a specific enough problem to fix it. It's just like saying, well, the first problem is that there's something wrong. So, well, you need to know exactly what's wrong. So being more specific is in why was it too difficult? What made it too difficult? Was it vocab? Was it you're trying to read too fast? Was it you didn't read the instructions? Was it, whatever it might be. But once you understand exactly what's going wrong, you can take action on fixing those problems. But when you're not sure what the issues are, there's nothing really you can do until you have that information. Okay, so I have another question here from Sachobedin. Hi, Lar. I would like to figure out how to level up in reading. So that's kind of what I was saying just there. It's doing a practice test and finding out what you're doing wrong, why you're getting the answers wrong. So do a practice test. And let's say, for example, if you got 10 questions wrong, write down numbers 1 to 10. And then for the first one, go back and check, okay, here's the answer I chose. Here's the incorrect answer. Why did I choose this instead of this? How did I end up here when I needed to end up here? And it's about kind of retracing your steps and kind of remembering like, okay, when I was doing that, what was I thinking about? Where was I? Was I reading too fast and I didn't understand it? And I should have gone back and read it again when I lost focus, but I just kept going because I'm in a rush or, whatever that would be. So you need to figure out what it is. When you analyze those mistakes, there will always be mistakes related to unknown vocabulary. So, I didn't have the vocab level I needed. I didn't have the vocab level I needed to get this answer right. So there were some words in the question that I didn't understand. So for most people, that will kind of be the cap, in that there were some answers you got wrong because you kind of approached the question incorrectly, or you made little mistakes that you can easily fix. So you should always try to fix the easy ones first and see if that will get you the score you need. But eventually you'll get to the point where every answer you're getting wrong is because you didn't know the vocabulary. And at that point, the only solution is to start studying vocabulary. And that is where it can take a long time. So if you already have the vocabulary level you need, the other problems won't take so long to fix. But if you're not getting the score you need and every single answer was wrong because you didn't know the vocab, then you have to start studying vocab. The problem then is you don't know which vocab you need and which vocab you don't need. So, it's difficult. It's not like, when you're in school and the teacher goes, okay, here's 20 words, go and learn these words. And you know what words are on the test. That's pretty easy. But in the IELTS test, it's just like every word in the English language. You need to know all of them, learn as many as you can. So it's hard to know what vocab will be useful and what vocab won't be useful. So you just like, since you start studying English, you just continue learning new words. I would generally say learn new words that are easy. Don't try to learn new words that are difficult. Try to learn new words that are easy, words that ideally words that are already kind of familiar, where you've kind of seen them before, you remember seeing them before. You don't know what they mean, but you kind of remember that you've heard it before, you've seen it before. Those are the perfect words to learn because they're suitable for your current level, instead of going trying to learn like the most difficult words you can find, because you're not going to be able to use those for a long time. Whereas if you're learning words that are already somewhat familiar to you, you'll be able to kind of introduce them into your own writing and speaking more quickly. Okay, so Fazal, hi Fazal. Long time no see. It is indeed. Yeah, good to see you here. And Tukarak, hi to you. Welcome to the lesson. Okay, so Tukarak says, I got a 7 in the writing section twice. Good, well done. When I looked at the breakdown, I saw in grammar I'm getting a 7 in writing task 1, writing task 2, and speaking. I feel that it's hampering my scores. I don't know. I don't understand. I mean, yeah, if you need to improve your grammar, but you can't have got, like, let's say, for example, if we're talking about writing task 1 and you said you've got a band 7 overall and you got a band 7 in grammar, well, you probably got band 7 in 2 other scores as well. So like, let's say, for example, you got task achievement 7, coherence and cohesion 7, vocab 8, and grammar 7. So you probably got 3 7s and 1 8. So I don't know, why are you specifically, and I'd like you to answer this, why are you specifically focusing on grammar as being an issue as opposed to all the other scores that were also band 7? Now, I don't know, maybe you didn't get an 8 for vocab, or, it could be like with task 1, you could have potentially got 2 8s, but then all 7s in task 2. So why is it that you're giving so much attention to grammar as opposed to the other band scores? I wonder, because I'm assuming you got, you would have got quite a few band 7s for the individual scores if you're getting overall band 7 in writing as well. So when it comes to improving your grammar, for the most part, it would be accuracy. Now, there is the potential that your range of structures isn't wide enough. That can certainly stop you from getting a band 8. But for most students, when their range is good enough for a 7, it's often good enough for a band 8 as well. So the problem then is, for most people, it's accuracy. That, you like, take a look at what types of mistakes, what kind of grammar mistakes are you making in task 1 and task 2? It's more likely small things like, maybe you're making mistakes of punctuation or subject-verb agreement, articles, plurals, one or two of those types of mistakes, where you just need to, find out which type of mistake you're making most often and work on improving it so that you can use that language accurately, use that grammar point accurately. There is the potential that you need to improve the range, but more likely it's accuracy. So finding out, which one you make most often and focusing on that, fixing it. After that, see which is the new grammar mistake you make most often, because you just fixed the other one. And then, like one at a time, just kind of chipping away at your biggest problems. Okay. So I specifically talked about grammar as I got 7 in grammar for both writing and speaking, but in speaking I got an 8 overall. Okay, so you must have got, how would that work? You must have got some band 9, maybe like fluency band 9. Vocab and pronunciation band 8 and grammar band 7, something like that maybe. Yeah, so what you're saying is you want to improve grammar because it's going to help with every part of the test. Yeah, again, that makes sense. So when it comes to grammar, you want to make sure that you can do it right in writing first. When you're writing, you have more time to think. So you can kind of stop, think about what you're doing, think about the rules. You can go back and change mistakes. You can reread it and look for mistakes and fix them later. So what I'd recommend is, it depends where you are, but potentially you need to start by looking at the rules, studying the rules, and making sure you understand what the rules are. So let's say, for example, we look at your writing, and your most common mistake is plurals, just for example. So go back and study the rules, make sure you understand the rules. Then you do lots of reading, lots and lots of reading. But when you're reading, you're just looking at plurals and you're trying to understand. It's like, okay, they've used a plural. I don't understand why they've used that plural. I thought that should be singular. Why is this plural? You go back and you look at the rules and try to figure out why is it not the way you would expect it to be. Or, you could go to ChatGPT and get ChatGPT to explain it to you or whatever. But basically, as you're reading, you're trying to explain to yourself that particular grammar area. So you're reading a text going, okay, I understand that. Oh, this one doesn't make sense to me. So you're trying to get a deeper understanding of the rules. So you go study the rules, do lots of active reading, it's called, where you're reading with a specific purpose, a goal on improving your grammar in this case. After that, you focus on writing. So you do lots of writing with a focus on that one grammar area still, making sure you get it right. And once you're happy, once you know that you can do it correctly in your writing, that means that you understand it deeply and you do know how to use it. That's when you introduce it into your speaking. When you are speaking, you need to speak slowly. So you need to practice, at home by yourself. There's no point in trying to do this when you're speaking with other people, because you need to speak slowly. So you're doing lots of speaking practice on your own. But the goal is, again, in this example, we're focusing on plurals. You're going slowly and correctly. So when you do it slowly and correctly for long enough, you're able to stop and think and make sure it's correct. And you're doing it slowly and correctly. After a while, what you'll notice is it starts to become habit, nearly like muscle memory, where you're doing it correctly without really needing to go so slowly. So again, you continue focusing on it. You're not finished yet. You don't need to do it slowly, so you're making progress, but you still focus on it, making sure it's always correct. And eventually what happens is it just starts to slip out naturally or automatically, where you're not even thinking about it anymore, and it's coming out correct. Even when you're not thinking about it, it's just coming out correctly, because you've invested that time of going slowly and correctly for long enough that now your brain just basically remembers what to do and spits it out correctly without even thinking. And that's essentially when that's done. So let's say that would be, you've done all of that process for plurals. And now when you go back and you check again, you go, okay, plurals was my most common mistake, but now that I fixed it, my next most common mistake is subject-verb agreement. So now we go back through the same process again: rules, reading, writing, speaking. And you just kind of repeat that process. I mean, it's slow and it's very boring, but it gets the job done, and especially when you're studying for the IELTS test, where the goal is, let's just get this done as quickly as possible and move on with my life. It is a very effective way of getting it done. Okay. So I have a question here from Dr. Salak. What are the differences between 8.5 and 9 in task 2? So 8.5 and 9 in task 2, it's basically, you get 4 individual scores. So you've got task response, coherence and cohesion, vocab, and grammar. And if you're getting 8.5, that means 2 of these are a 9 and 2 are an 8. It doesn't have to necessarily be these 2 are 9 and these 2 are 8. It could be like, these 2 are 9 and these 2 are 8, or these 2 are 9 and these 2 are 8. Doesn't matter. But basically, the average score is 8.5. It could also be that 3 of those scores are 9 and 1 is 8. So you could have like 3 9s and 1 8, or 3 9s and 1 8, or whatever combination. That would still be an 8.5. So to get a band 9, you need 9, 9, 9, 9. All 4 would need to be 9. So again, then the difference depends on which score we're talking about. So if it's task response, it's going to be you're getting a band 8 instead of a 9 because you haven't developed it fully enough. For coherence and cohesion, it could be just some minor issues with like pronouns, cohesive devices. Maybe the connection between sentences isn't always that clear. Maybe some paragraphing problems, something like that. With vocab, it could be a lack of range, or it could be a lack of accuracy, or it could be a little bit of both. And the same with grammar. Either the range isn't good enough or the accuracy isn't good enough. So, it's going to be one of those problems, or at least two of those problems, 2 of those sets of problems. So that's basically it. But again, you would need to get your writing checked to find out exactly what mistakes you're making. So if you've been getting 8.5 and you don't know what exactly is the reason why you're at that score rather than the band 9, you need to get your writing checked, see what your problems are, and again, fix them, like we were saying earlier on. On my courses, I do offer, I have essay corrections that I offer, and the students on my courses also have essay corrections included in the courses. So I can help you with that if you want. There's my email address, lar@completetestsuccess.com, or I think the link for my academy is in the comments under the video as well, in the description. How can I get there? So yeah, like I was saying, you just figure out what mistakes are you making. Once you know what mistakes you're making, you work on fixing them. But first step is definitely finding out what problems you have. Clear guidelines, please. If you have further questions, please let me know, by all means. Yeah, but it just depends on your situation. So I could have one student getting band 8 because they need to improve their task response and coherence and cohesion. I can have another one who needs to improve their vocab and grammar. So obviously those 2 people technically have the same problem. They're getting 8.5 and they need 9, but their solutions are completely different. So it just depends on the student, and without looking at your work, it's difficult to say. My current one is 8 and 8.5. Yeah, that's very good. Very impressive. 9 seems like luck. No, unfortunately not. 9 is essentially like you're able to write at the level of like somebody who's like completed university, say. Not necessarily a native English speaker, but somebody who can read and write to a high standard. So no, it's not luck. But if you're making grammar mistakes, that's not because you're lucky or unlucky. It's just you haven't studied grammar enough. I would say perhaps in a very, very a small aspect of luck would be the topic. So you say you're a doctor. So like, let's say if you're in the test and you get a question about healthcare, you're going to have a lot of vocab to talk about that. So there would be potentially luck where you get a topic that's good for you or a topic that's bad for you. But besides that, not really. Not really. But you could just get good topics for you, and that would play to your strengths. So a small aspect of luck, but in general, no, I wouldn't say that. Sorry, sir, I sent these comments long ago. Yeah, you're more than welcome. You're very welcome. No problem at all. And got your point. Perfect. Okay. So the next question here. To correct. In order to get a high score in writing task 2, should I always talk about both sides, irrespective of the question type? No, you don't have to. for the most part, I would just get my students to focus on, supporting their own ideas. But it depends on the question type. Like you'll see, like on my courses, I teach this. If you look at my the videos on my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, you'll see that I cover like kind of different structures for different question types, a different number of ideas for different question types. So you do kind of need to be aware of the different types of questions and how you would address each one differently. So it is good to do research on that type of thing before your test, instead of getting to the test, reading the question, and then going like, what should I say, or how many ideas do I need? Where, and this is especially what I'll do with the students on my course, make sure that they know instantly. They see a question type that okay, I need 4 ideas for this, 2 ideas on that side, 2 ideas on that side. I'm going to have 4 paragraphs with one side covered in the second and one side covered in the third. They know this instantly, that type of thing. So it's good to have kind of done your research into the types of questions and made a decision how you're going to respond to those different question types. You'll find different structures on different websites. It's not that every teacher will give you the same structure, but as long as you're following a teacher who's reliable, use whatever structures you want. It's not necessarily that you have to do it the way I say. Just make sure it's one reliable way. And Creative Boy, hi to you, welcome. How to practice in English for talking. So when it comes to speaking, you can't really improve speaking. You can't think of speaking as a skill that you improve. You have to break it down. And like they have in the IELTS test, there are 4 skills: fluency, vocab, grammar, pronunciation. So when you want to sit down, let's say I've got 2 hours free, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to improve my speaking. The first decision you need to make is, which of those 4 are you working on? You can't improve all 4 at the same time. So are you trying to improve your fluency or your vocab or your grammar or your pronunciation? Typically speaking, you should focus on whichever one is your weakest area. So, if your weakest area is pronunciation, I would recommend that that's the one that you spend your time on. If your weakest area is fluency, obviously that's the one you need to work on. However, where I would say that that's not the case would be if you have a test coming up soon. So like, let's say if you have a test in a week, that's not enough time to improve your grammar. So even though grammar might be your weakest area, giving your time restrictions that you only have a week before your test, it's not really the right time to start studying grammar. So if you have enough time, focus on your biggest weakness. And if you don't have much time left, you just focus on fluency, because you can really make good improvements in fluency in a short period of time. But yeah, besides that, make a decision. Are you improving fluency, vocab, grammar, pronunciation? You can't do any 2 of those at the same time. Fluency essentially requires you to completely ignore the other skills and just kind of build up a confidence and ability to speak without effort. If you're, like we were talking earlier, if you're trying to improve grammar, it requires you to ignore fluency, do lots of really slow and correct. So you're ignoring fluency while you're improving grammar. So they're different skills. You need to address them differently. Okay. Sir, if I am unable to complete any of the writing task or less than 150 words, how will I get a penalty for that? If you write less than 150 words, you don't get an additional penalty. That was something that they did in the past, a long time ago, but they've stopped doing that. So right now, it's just based on, if you have a short essay, you won't be getting a high score for task achievement or coherence and cohesion, because there isn't enough detail or enough development. So besides that, you're asking, like, if you don't complete your task, well, it depends how incomplete it is, because your task response score is still based on your ideas. Did you have an appropriate number of ideas? Were they relevant? Were they specific? How much did you develop them? So that would determine your score more. And if you didn't complete it, meaning that you had enough ideas, but some of them weren't developed, that would be a 6. If you had developed all of your ideas a little bit, that would be a 7. So it just depends on it depends on what you've produced, and it depends on, the accuracy and the quality. So it's not just instantly, it's short, this is the score you get. It still would be based on, what ideas you used, how well you developed them, the range of vocab, the accuracy. So it would still be the same requirements that the examiner is looking for. But with a shorter essay, you're not going to reach the requirements for the higher band scores. It's just not possible. Hi, Mandeep. Welcome to the lesson. Good to see you here. Would practice with ChatGPT help? Yeah, definitely. But what are you practicing? What are you trying to improve? Would be the question. If you're trying to improve your fluency, yes. But like I said earlier on, you can't improve the 4 skills at the same time. So what happens with ChatGPT is it'll give you a question, you'll answer it, and then go, here are all your vocab, grammar, pronunciation problems. Well, actually, no, vocab and grammar problems. So that's very useful. If you're trying to improve your grammar, great. You speak to ChatGPT, it tells you what your problems are. You can start looking at them and trying to figure out why they're wrong and trying to fix them. Fantastic. If you're trying to improve your fluency, you don't want feedback on vocab or grammar. You want to continue speaking. So after you answer the first question, you just want the next question. You don't want to spend 20 minutes looking at grammar when you're trying to improve your fluency. So just if you are practicing with ChatGPT, don't let ChatGPT decide what you're going to do with your time. You tell ChatGPT, okay, I'm working on fluency. When I finish my answer, I want the next question. I don't want feedback. Just let's keep moving. Or if you're working on grammar, don't go like, okay, I want to see my grammar mistakes. Like we were talking about earlier in this live stream, if you're trying to improve grammar, you choose the one particular grammar area. For example, you're trying to improve plurals. Tell that to ChatGPT. Go, I want feedback on any grammar mistakes I'm making with plurals. I don't want any other type of feedback. I don't want feedback on vocabulary. I don't want feedback on any other types of grammar mistake. So just make sure that ChatGPT is helping you with what you're doing, not distracting you and getting you to focus on other things. One last thing then with ChatGPT, if you are working on pronunciation, my understanding is that it can't just give you feedback on the fly, where you're speaking to the voice version. I don't know the right word, but you're not just speaking to ChatGPT. You have to record yourself, upload that file of yourself speaking, like the audio recording. You upload the file to ChatGPT, and it's able to give you feedback on your pronunciation that way, but not if you just speak to it and ask it to give it back. You do to give you feedback. You do have to upload the file for that to work. Okay, next question here. Please talk about the penalty process. How much score will cut for less word or not able to cover every aspect properly? So there is no penalty for fewer words. They won't penalize that directly. But let's say it goes like this. For task response, your ideas have to be relevant and specific. And you need to give enough ideas. So for example, if the question says, what are the advantages and disadvantages? You need 4. If you didn't give 4, you're not going to get band 6. You have to give 4, and they have to be all relevant and they have to be all specific. That will get you your band 6. After that, you need to develop them. If you've developed them all a little bit, band 7. If you've developed them all further, band 8. If you develop them all fully, band 9. So when those are kind of the milestones, and if there are any of those that you didn't reach, well, then you're getting the appropriate score. So it's not so much about how many words you wrote, it's how much development you had for each idea. And this is where some students go wrong. I've seen students where they'll write 100 words for one idea and then 20 words for the next idea. So it's like, you have to fully develop all your ideas for band 9. So if you've developed one idea enough for a band 9, for example, but one idea with very small amount of development, good enough for a 7, you're getting band 7. Like the good one doesn't determine your score. It's the weakest one determines the score. So you have to treat each idea equally. You have to develop each one, roughly the same amount. Okay, so Mandeep, sir, I have an important question that students who are from Uzbekistan often get 9 perfect bands, but I didn't see any Indian students who has perfect 9 bands. I don't know, maybe they're talking about it more. Maybe maybe their education when they're in primary school and secondary school focuses more on English. Like I know, like the country that gets the most band 9s in the world is Germany, and that's because they're taught that language from a very young age. They're taught it well, and they watch English movies and TV shows. They listen to English music, so like they have a lot of. It's not that examiners in Germany are more lenient. It's not that German people are luckier or have an easier time studying English. It's just that the whole infrastructure in their education would guide them towards being more proficient in English than perhaps. I don't know much about the education system in your country in India, but if English is getting a lot more attention when you're a child, it's going to be a lot easier to learn it to a high proficiency level. So I don't know. Like I'm guessing. I don't know either. I don't know the exact answer. I think as well with like people from India, I think it's a stronger accent that transfers over to English as well. So for pronunciation, it's harder for a lot of Indian people from India to kind of master the pronunciation, whereas in Uzbekistan, the transfer across to English, the accent doesn't have as big an impact on pronunciation. So there's so many factors like that, but it could be a combination of all of those things. It might be none of those things. It might be something else completely. I'm just kind of guessing based on kind of what I've seen. But yeah, maybe one of those, maybe none of those. How to make English best? You just continue studying one skill at a time. Hi, girlfriend. Any tips for true, false, not given questions for reading? Yeah. So one is I tell my students to go paragraph by paragraph instead of question by question. So conventional IELTS strategies are you read question 1, then you look at the full text, try to find the answer. When you found the answer, read question 2, look at the full text again, try and find the answer. But what I'll do is go the other way around. I get my students to read paragraph 1. When they finish reading paragraph 1, look at every question and answer as many as you can. When you're finished, read paragraph 2, look at every question, answer as many questions as you can. So that's one thing that makes it a bit less complicated. But also with true, false, not given questions, they're in the same order. So as you're reading the text, the first one you're going to find is question 1. The second answer you're going to find is question 2. The third answer you're going to find is question 3. So they come in the same order in the text as the order of the questions. And that's helpful because when you're reading paragraph by paragraph, you're going to find them in order. And if you found the answer to question 1 here and the answer to question 3 here, you'll know that question 2 should be somewhere between those. And if you can't find it, it's probably not given. So, it's easier to kind of pinpoint where you're looking when you go paragraph by paragraph. And the other thing then is just to be aware of what is true, what is false, and what is not given. So if the answer is true, you can show me in the text how you know it's true. So I go, okay, question 2, you said it's true. How do you know? And you go, oh, look here, look at this. It says this in the text. The same with false. If I say, how do you know it's false? You go, oh, look down here. It says this in the text. So you can show me why you think it's true. You can show me why you think it's false. But when it's not given, I can't say, how do you know it's not given? You can't go, oh, look here. It says something. That not given means it doesn't say anything. The information isn't there. So, if you can't find the answer, that's what not given means. But a problem that a lot of students have is that not being able to find the answer and the answer being not given, those are the same experience. So when you're looking for not given, you're going, I can't find it, I can't find it, I can't find it. And you're very likely to blame yourself instead of going, it's because the answer is not given. I just need to write down NG. So, don't lose too much time with not given questions. There will come a time where you just have to accept, I cannot find it. That probably means it's not given. You might be wrong, but from the evidence you have, that's the decision you have to make. Mandeep, I got 8.5. Well done. But my goal is perfect 9. Very good. Is it possible, especially in writing? Of course it's possible. Yeah. I mean, of course it's possible. It might be more work than you want it to be. That doesn't mean it's impossible, though. It just means you might have a lot of work to get there. And when it feels you're close, 8.59, it seems very close. But, it could be a few months of work to make that the necessary improvements. Sir, in task 1, I couldn't decide which data I should pick. I mean, there's many data, which data should be written and which data can be left out. If it's a static graph, you need to include all the data. If it's a dynamic graph, you just choose the kind of key points. So you'll choose the start. Like if we're talking about one category, you'll choose the start and the end. And then in the middle, if there are any significant bends or turns, you mention that where it turns. So, if it was like this, you would mention the start, where it turns, and the end. If it's just a straight line, you mention the start and the end. So it just depends on that. If it's dynamic, it will be always the start, always the end, and any significant turns. If it's static, you include all the data. How to do best in IELTS? So, I mean, the question is just like how to get a good score. Improve your English, really. Like make sure that your reading, writing, listening, and all aspects of speaking are as good as an educated native English speaker. That's basically it. I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but it's just you just have to improve every aspect of your English. If someone does an EOR, why do the band scores change? I mean, I can understand if it changes by 0.5, but I've seen recently that someone's speaking score got increased by 2.5. I mean, that examiner probably lost their job. That's not okay. That's not okay at all. That is somebody who is not doing their job properly, and IELTS does not stand for that. I mean, one thing you would say is, look, at least IELTS is completely honest, where they're not going like, pretending that they were right when they know they were wrong. They're very honest, and they go like, this score was wrong. This is the score you should have got. Here's the score you should have got. Here's your money back. Like they're honest about it. But no, the examiner, like if the examiners are out by half a band, they wouldn't lose their jobs. If they're out by 2.5, that person cannot keep working. They would have had to pass the training to get the job. So, I mean, it's probably not that they're incapable. It's probably that, I don't know, they're having a bad day. They don't care. They're trying to get fired. I don't know why somebody would be so wrong, but that person's not keeping their jobs. So, I mean, that's terrible that happened, but it's not because, that person hasn't received the appropriate training or hasn't passed the appropriate, standards to become an examiner. So there's something else going on with that individual. It's not, it's not across the board that this is something that happens. I'm a beginner in IELTS. How to improve my English for study in UK? I mean, if you're just studying in general, it depends how much time you have before the test. But I mean, you'll never know too much vocabulary, and vocabulary takes a long time to improve. So in general, I would say just study how to write the various parts of the test, like how to write a task 1 essay, how to write a task 2 essay for the various types of questions, what's the format of the test for speaking, reading, and listening. Just get yourself familiar with how the test works and what you're supposed to do. But if you have time, continue studying vocab, because it takes so long to improve. And like I said, you'll never have too much. You'll never feel like, oh, I shouldn't have wasted all that time learning vocab. It's always going to be valuable. And if you're just beginning, it's the one area that might slow you down the most coming up towards test date is not having enough vocab. So starting early with vocab is a good idea. How can I improve speaking, sir? So we talked about this earlier on, and the recording of this live stream will be up. Once we finish the live stream, the recording will be up and you can watch it. So we have spoken about this already. in detail. But it's basically you choose, are you trying to improve fluency, vocab, grammar, or pronunciation? Make that decision, find out what problems you have in that area, and then work on fixing those. You are an IELTS examiner, dear sir. So my question is this: which important things IELTS examiner finds in writing and speaking, especially for 9 band students? So I mean, the examiner is looking at, the 4 different band scores. So if we're talking about writing task 2, you have task response, coherence and cohesion, vocab, grammar. They're all 25%. So it's not that the examiner is looking for one specific thing. It's across the board. You meet the standards for all of those. The same for task 1. And then speaking, again, fluency, vocab, grammar, pronunciation, each are worth 25%. So the examiner isn't giving any preference to one over another. The examiner is just making sure your standards are good enough in every one of those. I have 2 months for my IELTS preparation. Yep. So I mean, just learn how the different parts of the test work first. I have courses that I can help you with that. If you want to join my course, and then I'm giving you, individual or one-on-one feedback on your writing and your speaking and helping you with your reading and listening. If you don't need feedback, take a look at the videos on my YouTube and Facebook, just to get an idea of how the test works and what you're expected to do in each part of the test. Okay, guys, so I think that's pretty much it for today. Lots of good questions. Hopefully that's helped you all. And yeah, talk to you again. I'll have another live stream next week. And if any of you have tests coming up, best of luck with that. Take care of yourselves.